um, on the left table, I actually think this is the most interesting hand of the whole session. So we'll do it street by street. But we have a limp and then an over limp with the two early position players. I'm pretty certain, yeah. So we have pocket sixes on the button, two limpers under the gun. I mean, I could make a case for raising or calling behind here with the sixes. What are your initial thoughts, bearing in mind this is a bounty tournament? What's your standard line here?
Yeah, bearing in mind it's a bounty tournament, if this were a normal tournament, we'd be more incentivized to chase the 4.7 bigs that are out there. So I think the case for raising would be stronger. It being a bounty tournament, really a lot of the value of a hand like pocket sixes is when we hit a set, preferably in a low board, and we hit and we stack somebody's overpair or two pair or whatever. So in a PKO, I'd pretty much never raise this hand. Start the under the gun limper will have some, and this is not a hand that we can happily stack off with pre-flop. So raising just opens the door for him to limp re-raise. A lot of the value of this hand, as I said, set mining just goes way up in value in PKOs, because when you hit your set, there's a very, very good chance. And actually, when you hit your set, the more players in the pot, the better, because you want somebody else to have two pair or top pair even, which people may stack off with in a PKO 50 big steep. So normally one of the advantages of raising this hand would be to narrow the field and to take the betting lead and therefore win the pot uncontested post flop if possible. But those are not as big a thing in PKOs. There's a lot more value in just trying to hit a set and get somebody's bounty. Yeah. And the thing with these sort of small to middly pocket pairs is, from a purely theoretical point of view, they play very well heads up, because if they're ahead pre-flop, they'll usually be the best hand on the flop. But they also play very, very well multi-way, and multi-way, the more in the better. The more the hand, it's better to have six pairs in the pot than four, because, as I said, more likely somebody else has a hand that can pay you off when you hit your set.
Thankfully, I was roughly the same thought process. I also really like the fact that we were in position, but I guess being in position doesn't make much of a difference. If we were small blind, you'd be really happy completing here. If we were in, if we were in this seat here, you'd probably still limp along, wouldn't you? It doesn't.
Yeah, the small pairs don't really worry. Small to medium pairs don't really worry too much about position, because it's kind of a case of no set, no bet. I guess it's better to be in position in the sense that it's easier to get the chips in if we hit our set, but that we don't have to worry about getting checked behind. But like, suited connectors are far more sensitive to position than pairs, because suited connectors will often flop a decent amount of equity, but they won't be able to call a big bet, so they like being able to check behind. There is some benefit in the sense too that, like, maybe we hit our set on the turn rather than the flop, and maybe everybody checks to us when we're in position, so we get that chance. But like, we still only have two outs in that case. Often the suited connectors will flop hands that have 6 to 8 outs that we don't really want to call a bet with, but we'd love to get a free card. So yeah, I think even a small blind I'd be flatting here as well.
So just out of interest, then, if I had 6-7 suited in this spot, or maybe say in the cutoff, would you ever make a case for like raising to maybe buy the button or something like that, or would you still be?
Yeah, I would. So I think there's a stronger case to be made. I still probably would flat, but I think the case for raising is stronger. The other thing is too, at certain stack depths, we might manipulate. Like, if we have a hand like 7-6 suited and there are 6 big blinds in the pot, and somebody bets, and we have, let's say, a fairly strong draw, we don't necessarily want 50 big blinds would be too much to shovel into the pot at that point. But if we have raised pre-flop, so there's now, like, let's say 16 big blinds out there, now getting it in with a strong draw on the flop is much more attractive. So from a purely pot manipulation point of view, it could make more sense to raise the pot. Whereas with pocket sixes, we literally just want to keep the pot as small as possible and try and hit our set.
Gotcha. Yes, I pretty much came to the same conclusion. So I called along for the same reasons.
Yeah, it's good. And no set. That's a weird bet.
It is a weird bet. I'm very glad this hand came up because I naturally don't quite know what to do in spots like this as well.
I mean, this is such a small bet. We can definitely think about calling. We have a backdoor straight as well. It's worth noting. If it comes specifically 5-3 or 5-8, we make a straight. And it's such a small bet. Like, he can just be blocker betting. He could be blocker betting a worse hand than ours. It's unfortunate we're blocking 5-6, but we're not blocking spades, for example. So he could be just doing this with a flush draw, just trying to buy a cheap turn. So yeah, I don't mind calling here, just for the sizing. This is probably literally the only size I'd even consider calling, and the fact that the other two pairs got out of the way. So yeah, I think we can make a case for calling here, even though our hand is very weak.
Yes, I believe it or not, I did roughly come to the same conclusion with there. I kind of think someone would have raised, like he might have pumped it up even with a crap ace in a pot like this.
Yeah, I don't think he has an ace, and I think if he has an ace, he's probably more incentivized to check call rather than do this. This really looks like a let's keep it friendly bet, which means he wants to see the turn, but he doesn't have a super. It's also possible he's just flopped gin with pocket fours or something, and he's doesn't want to let it check through. But if he did that, he should bet bigger because he should be trying to engage the stacks. So, I mean, let's be honest. There's no real hand he should be doing this with, but we still have to try and interpret what hands might be doing it. And I think the most flat draws weak one pair hands. The thing with the weak one pair hands too is we have more than one way to win the hand. We don't necessarily have to just fold if we don't hit. So like if he continues to bet this small amount, we could potentially think about bluffing on a later street.
Right, so I do call because I can still hit a set, I can still make a straight, and obviously very interesting turn card. So,
that is an interesting turn card. Yeah, one other point I'd say before we move on is that in a PKO, because we want to cover as many players as possible at the table, that kind of almost incentivizes us to continue a little bit wider here, because if we fold, we're going to be probably the second shortest stack at the table and won't be able to win any bounties next hand. So it's almost a case of like, now we're not exactly pot committed, let's say, but we would really, really like to win this hand. If we win this hand, we cover everybody at the table, and that's an amazing situation. If we fold on the flop, we're going to be the second shortest stack, no matter what happens in the hand. So that gives us another reason to continue.
So
okay, so the turn card is super.
So obviously the turn card is sort of the action card from our perspective. I mean, the small blind has called two. I mean, initially you'd think that probably just smacks of a 7 or a 4, and he's just getting a decent price, and also it's probably got the same incentive as us to not with a short stack and try and win 2 bounties with a magical turn card. But it's been checked. It's been checked to us, and we've now picked up the up and down straight draw. And because we've got pocket sixes, it's very, very unlikely that someone else is going to have a straight or have this draw. So I guess my question is, how do you play this in a normal tournament, and then how does your strategy differ in a PKO, if at all?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I think the answers are very, very different. In a normal tournament, I probably just check behind here, because I figure our hand has decent showdown. We're still ahead of flush draws. We're still ahead of 4x. And it's going to be difficult to get better hands to fold. If somebody has an ace, they're probably going to hang on. So if we're behind, if we we certainly don't want to get check raised. That would be a disaster in a normal tournament. So we have a good draw, which has a good chance of getting there against better hands, and we have showdown. So I think normally in those circumstances, I just check behind and take my equity. In a PKO, it's completely different. We've used this analogy before, but it's almost like a split pot game where we're playing for the high and the low. And if we check behind here, it's impossible to imagine a scenario where we get all the chips on the river against a worse hand. So in a PKO, I'm tempted to overbet here. I think that's useful for two reasons. First of all, if they fold, that's great. We've won 9.2 big blinds. If they call and we hit our miracle straight on the river, they're much more likely to call it off. Like if we bet 12 big blinds and they call, it's going to be 33 big blinds. And so we're going to have roughly a pot size bet behind, and an ace might talk us up into calling off, particularly if the spades miss. They might think we have a missed spade. So yeah, I think now I'd probably just go ahead and bet 12 big blinds.
Wow, that's completely not what I did. I actually thought we would be in simpatico until the river with this hand, but although I do like the logic. But just to play devil's advocate on that a little bit, like we're over betting, and if we get action, surely we can only hit our draw, right? Like,
yeah, but that won't be the worst thing in the world. I mean, a lot of the equity of the overbet comes from when they just fold,
right?
Or if they have a draw and decide to call, if they have spades, for example, that's very good for us as well. It's going to suck if they check raise us all in, but we'll have bet so much that we'll still be able to call off. We'll have the right price when we take the bounty into consideration. So it won't be an amazing spot for us, but it won't be terrible. Everything else about the play is great for us. If they fold, it's great. If they call, it's great. So it's I think it's the best play.
Would that change at all if the action had been a little bit different pre-flop? So, for example, if we were playing a slightly bigger pot against an under-the-gun raiser in this instance, where suddenly their hand is weighted way more towards aces, so they're probably unlikely to
Absolutely. Like the key here is I think we have a lot of fold equity when we overbet, because they have a lot of weak one pair hands, 7x and 4x.
Yeah.
If it's another gun raiser, he's going to have ace-x a lot more. He could also have sets. But essentially what's happened here is they've both somewhat capped their range. First of all, the small bet on the flop looks kind of weak. It's just like, let's see a turn. Then secondly, they both checked the turn. So if they actually had like a strong made hand, you would expect them to continue wanting to protect and wanting to get as much chips in while they're still ahead. So it really does feel that most of the time, occasionally they're slow playing some monster, but most of the time they just have a very weak hand here, and we can attack. From a theoretical point of view, anytime somebody caps their range, that's a really good time to overbet. Right. Because you put them in a really difficult situation. If they fold all of their hands, then they're just getting massively exploited. Because maybe the strongest hand, let's imagine the strongest hand either of them here has is a 7. And if they're not going to call it a 7, then when we bet, we just they have no calls, so they're getting massively exploited. On the other hand, like if they call with a 7, it's a really dicey spot for them as well. So you just make the situation really difficult for them with the overbet.
Right. Well, in which case you're going to hate what happens, because I took a slightly different kind of. I don't think these guys have got anything line. Therefore, I'm going to bet quite small, sort of for value and to get them to come along if I do hit on the river. Which
the problem with that logic is that if they have a weak hand, they're not going to call the river when an 8 or a 3 rolls off. Your only real chance is for them to have a strong hand. So actually, by sort of like betting bigger and strengthening their calling ranges, that's actually a good thing for when you hit. When you bet small, I mean, okay, yeah, their 7s and their 4s will hang on, but they're not going to call a river shove anyway. particularly if the pot's only 15 big blinds and you're shoveling 40 big blinds in.
Right. Things get very interesting then in a second.
Yeah, this bet is kind of pointless if you're going to bet 33% because they're not really making a mistake. It's very hard for them to make a mistake against this bet. If they have a flush draw, they pretty much have the price to continue now. Oh wow!
So I already know.
Okay.
I already know what you're. At this point, you just pile it all in, right?
I'm not sure because I think his range now suddenly looks very strong.
Good, because that's what I thought as well.
Yeah, no, this feels weirdly strong now. I mean, he can have turn 2 pair. Yeah, like it's probably going to be profitable to shove in the sense that like we're always getting the bounty if we hit, assuming we're behind right. But on the other hand, we can just call and then fold river because I don't think this is ever a bluff. So I don't think we're ever ahead. We're getting 3-1 on the call. We have at least 8 clean outs, presuming he never has the flush draw.
Yeah.
And the sixes are probably outs as well. So we probably have 10 outs. So therefore, just what we can see 7 cards. So 10 of the 45 cards are good for us. So our equity is only roughly 3.5 to 1, and we're getting basically 3-1 on this call. So we almost have the price to call. Once in a blue moon, maybe he is doing something a little bit creative with a flush draw and he's going to give up on the river and it goes check, check, and we win. Most of the time he has a stronger hand, and if we hit the straight on the river, he's not going to be able to get away. So we're going to win the bounty. So that we had the implied odds of the rest of his stack, but also the bounty. So that I think, that makes it a pretty slam dunk call now.
Yeah, that's other than the fact that we disagreed on the bet size, and that's the conclusion I came to roughly when he bet like that. I never thought he was bluffing. I thought Matt's some sort of weird combo.
Yeah, I mean, as it happens, given that he almost certainly has a very strong hand, and the way you played the hand has actually worked out in the way I would advocate. But I still think overall it's better to play to overbet the turn. I mean, he's presumably going to shove if we do that. And we're going to have to call it off. But
no, don't worry.
Yeah,
by the time we get to the river, you'll be not pleased with how I played it anyway. So.
Okay.
I'm glad it came like that. In my memory, it came an 8, and I somehow missed it.
Okay.
Somehow I played it badly. So he checks.
There's no point in bluffing, I don't think. We're ahead of his flush draws. We're ahead of his. I don't think he's going to fold too much better. I mean, he might fold a 7, but I don't understand why you would check raise a 7. It'd have to be like 7-6 probably, where I think we just check now and take our equity. That's fine.
Yeah, and he had pocket freeze, which I was like,
that is.
In fact, I was so surprised by it. I just put it back up on the hand replayer, like to make sure.
That's just a guy who doesn't want to give up. I mean, I guess he's picked up a really bad gut shot on the turn.
Yeah.
But that's pretty enterprising by him. Yeah, I mean, he has exactly the type of hand we thought he had on the flop. He's like a weak hand, which he doesn't know what to do with, so he just throws out a one big blind bet.
It's not a gut shot on the turn though. It's a double belly buster, right? You can get a 6 or a 2.
Oh, he has a 2 as well. You're right. Yeah. Sorry, I completely missed. He has to do. Yeah, he's a double gut shot. Okay, I guess I don't hate it then as much, because if he hits his 2, I mean, his 6 is really bad. Like, I mean, he's chopping with the 3 and he's losing to any 8. But if he hits a 2, that would be pretty sweet for him. All right, yeah. And it would be hard for us to put him on a 3 specifically. So yeah, now I've realized he's got a double gutter. I think I don't hate his turn play as much. I think he definitely should bluff the river though. He absolutely needs to bluff the river because his hand really has almost no showdown now.
No,
and he's blocking the nuts, blocking 2-3. So I mean, not that you're likely to have 2-3 on the button anyway, but maybe 2-3 suited. Actually, yeah, 2-3 of spades might be there. So
the two blinds, the Jack Queen suited. Do you like?
Yeah, that's fine. You could this would normally be an open anyway. Like I think a big mistake people make when they get shallow is they play too tight in early positions. Your range should change. Like you shouldn't be opening small pocket pair. You can open Broadway type hands, particularly suited Broadways.
Yeah.
Okay, now this is interesting because we have quite a bit on this flop, even though we haven't actually hit.
Yes.
We have a gut shot and a backdoor flush draw. And it's 3-way.
Yep, it's 3-way.
And we can win both bounties, which is actually an amazing situation for us. Yeah, this is as good as late edge gets.
Yeah. So pretty certain it's checked to me. So what do you do in this spot?
There's a couple of ways we could go. Checking has a decent amount of merit because we don't really mind if it checks behind.
Mm-hmm. We're in position. Oh no, we're not. Sorry, we're not in position, are we?
Yeah, the other guy's behind. He's probably going to bet a wider range than he calls, and his bounty we can win. So we'd actually quite like to get it in against him, even if he has something like Ace-10. Mm-hmm. Because with everything that we have going on for us, we'll be almost a flip against him, and we're winning his bounty. So that's a benefit to checking. Betting, I mean, this isn't really our board. Like as I said, because of our stack depth, we're opening more high card hands, so Broadways. So yeah, I think checking, and if he bets, just put all the chips in.
Yeah.
Even if they both come in, that's fine too.
I mean,
our hand plays.
It kind of
if he shoves and Mickle J reshoves, we're almost certainly going to have enough equity to call, considering the fact that we can win both their bounties as well.
Yeah.
We could be up against a 10 and spades, for example, and that's an amazing spot for us.
Yeah, I seem to think my line was going to be if this guy shoves and this guy calls, I'm probably going to get it in. But he checks behind too, and we pick up obviously then a great turn card.
Okay, now I'm going to try and win the pot here.
Yeah, don't know what to do here. This will be interesting because I don't remember. It's tricky though because go on.
My first instinct here is just to shove, because I think then we always capture the bounty when we hit. If he calls and I think he has a decent amount of folds as well. He might be just taking a stab here because the flop check through. Yeah, I think I just shove now at this point.
I'm really hoping that's what I do, and I'm kind of hoping that I don't call in hopes to bring this guy on, which would be stupid because he'd be getting it in anyway. If he was going to call that, then
I think if he had a hand, he was getting it in on the flop anyway. So
yeah, there you go. So I did the little circle movement to indicate that I'm calling for this guy. I'm calling instead of
right.
For
yeah, I think I think he would have shown interest on the flop if he had. Now we've got queen high and a 1-to-1 stack to pot ratio.
I think it's around about this point that I thought to myself, oh god, this session's going terribly. I suppose it'll make for a good video.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you had reasons for it, which is the positive thing, even if they maybe weren't the best reasons. But at least you're thinking about the situations and adjusting your play accordingly. But yeah, I do think shoving the turn was a no-brainer there. Now we just have to fold, unfortunately.
I think I had some sort of decision with this. I mean, is this a defend? I mean, it is now because
yes. Yeah, this hand plays fine multi-way. I wouldn't find a hand like King 7 here, but 8-7 is fine.
So this is really good for us.
Yeah.
What's your standard line? Are you checking?
There's merit for both courses of action here.
I am checking with the intention of check raising.
Yeah, that's fine. Also, betting.
Multi-way?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to how often I think the guys will check behind. Yeah, this is obviously a good board for our range as well, and we have a lot of hands with good balance. We could want to bet diamonds, for example. Yeah, I think I probably lean towards betting on the flop, but I don't mind checking either.
And then in my mind, this card just ruined everything for me personally. Like, and suddenly I'm not happy to get in because now I'm, you know, potentially up against flush draws that beat me anyway. If I'm going to get some action, so
do you think somebody checks a flush draw on that flop?
No, but I think somebody picks up a flush draw on the turn.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but the fact that we can get value from like one diamond hands, that's more of an argument for actually betting.
Yeah.
The only problem is that now it's like, apart from one diamond hands, it's hard to see worse hands that call us now.
Yeah.
Jack 10 and one diamond hands, I guess, are the only worse hands that call. Yeah, I mean, it sucks, but I do fold.